Happy birthday, dear Walter. Happy birthday to you. Hip, hip, hooray!
Oh, thanks, James. But you know it's not my birthday, right? That was months ago. Remember? You got me the Lord of the Rings gift bundle. Amazing present, by the way. I use a lot of those cards.
Yeah, I know, but I've decided to start celebrating half birthdays with more presents. Here, open this one. I think you'll really like it.
James, you really didn't need to get me a present for my half. Oh my god, it's a lightsaber!
Yep, and guess what? I've got one too. Want to play Jedi?
Hell yeah, it's the best half birthday ever.
You know, I made these myself.
Really? That is very impressive.
Yeah, and they actually work too. Watch.
Ah! James, you cut my hand off!
Yeah, just like in the movies.
You cut my hand off!
Maybe I should put a warning label on it, like keep out of reach from children.
You're not even going to apologize for cutting my hand off? Right, well, I see what a good friend you are. You know what? Why don't we just complete this whole thing? Cut my other limbs off, chuck me in a volcano, and drape me in black leather. I don't want to be friends anymore.
All right. Give me the lightsaber back.
You will not take her from me!
Nice. You really nailed the whiny, oh my god, I've forgotten the actor's name now.
Hayden Christensen.
Yeah. I was about to say Christensen Aiden, but that's not him.
That's not him.
All I know about him as an actor is that he played Anakin. I actually don't know any of his other work.
I know that he was in a film about being like an insider in like a particular company and like betraying the company or something, only because there's a part of the film where he says, I have to take a dump. And then they've edited. There's this fantastic
I'm assuming edit over Anakin.
There's a fantastic edit online of episode 3 of Star Wars called like Revenge of the Sniff or something like that. I think I've showed it to you before. And
is this? Oh yes, the suck.
Yes, so there's like a whole bunch of quotes from there that are fantastic. But one of them is that Anakin goes, sorry, Padme goes, Annie, I'm pregnant, and Anakin smiles and goes, I have to take a dump. This is a happy moment. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. It's the GCP brought to you by POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast. We're all uniting forces to help you to have better games of Commander. I'm your host, Walt.
And hello, Commander players. I'm your other host, James, and I think we genuinely forgot we were recording a podcast just then.
I think we were recording a very different podcast.
Yeah.
That only we usually listen to.
Yeah, where we talk about movies and all that kind of good stuff. But look, I know we got to get to the actual podcast, but before we do, I did want to quickly highlight Palms Off Gaming. I know we say it at the start of every episode, but you guys might know because we've shouted it out before, but we are now with an affiliate program with Palms Off Gaming, and because we're very good friends with them, they are giving us a whopping 15% discount to pass on to you guys. Mm-hmm. This is a huge percent discount. So you can go to palmsoffgaming.com.au/#getcommanded to get 15% off your purchase. The best thing about this whole web link as well, which will be linked in the show notes, is you're not only getting amazing card sleeves, binders, deck boxes, you're also supporting the Get Commanded podcast. And that's what you're really doing it for, right? Not to just get the sick new blackout sleeves that they've released.
You were going to buy the sleeves anyway,
exactly.
So you might as well use our link and get yourself a sweet discount and support us at the same time. So it's palmsoffgaming.com.au/#getcommanded. But we do have an incoming transmission here, so we better get to that. It's from the deep depths of the galaxy, from the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded.
In Magic the Gathering sets, mechanics and commanders cannot ever be included thoughtlessly, as there are larger forces at play beyond limited. However, some strategies in the commander format are underdeveloped, and additional support may be needed in the form of new cards.
Alright, theory, general theory.
Yeah.
The Space Commanders are actually Hasbro, and they own Wizards of the Coast, and they're trying to up Wizards' profits.
And they're literally just asking us. what will sell off the shelves.
What will you idiots buy?
Based on the fact that you idiots would buy it, maybe everyone else would buy it as well.
Because we, as two, middle-class, white, mid-20s men, represent the entire demographic of Magic the Gathering players.
Look, we represent a good chunk of it, let's be real.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, this is interesting. So they want to know what they can revisit in the future. So this is like a future-thinking episode.
I feel like this is our Christmas wish list to WOTC kind of thing, right?
Basically, right?
Yeah.
They specifically wanted mechanics and they wanted commanders. So
right.
maybe that's the...
We'll split it into that.
We'll split it into two. So we've got our Christmas list lined up here. The first half will be mechanics we want them to revisit again. And the second half will be
commanders we want.
Yeah.
Or like commanders that fill a gap. So
yeah.
We'll start with the mechanics.
Okay.
Just generally, I think the mechanics that we want to revisit to think about what we're putting on our Christmas wish list, I think we should think about it in the context of Commander. Obviously, we're a Commander podcast.
Of course.
And I think the mechanics that we revisit could be the mechanics that add some juice to commanders that just aren't quite there yet. So like good in the 99 kind of thing. So like, maybe there are already legendary creatures that exist and that could be a functional commander, but them revisiting the mechanic in a set where the mechanic matters or something like that will help this become a viable strategy in Commander. Or it could make a whole new strategy in Commander.
Oh, I have one that immediately comes to mind because I have attempted to brew with this mechanic before, and there are like commanders that are fine to brew it with, but there are just not enough of the cards to put in the 99 that like the deck even works. Mutate.
Okay, so only been seen once ever in Ikoria.
Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, or whatever the full set name is. But yes, Ikoria in 2020 was the first and only time we had the mutate mechanic. So this was the thing where you could pay an alternate casting cost for the creature.
So you're still casting it.
You're still casting it, but it mutates onto a creature that you already have. So it adds its abilities and whatever it says on the card on top of whatever the creature you're mutating it onto is, and then depending on where you put it on the stack of mutate, it gets the power toughness. So only the top card affects the power toughness.
Yeah.
But if you have a, so for instance, there's a mutate creature that says like reach on it. So if you mutate that onto your like 4/4 trampler on the ground, it has now reach on it, and there's usually like a thing that happens when you mutate, right?
Yeah, whenever this creature mutates, do
this thing. Yeah. There's some really, really cool cards that have this mechanic, but there are just like not enough that you can make a commander deck out of it, and the commander deck would be good.
Well, I know you've tried to brew this before, but I've been recently looking at it because I think it's a really cool commander, and mainly because one of our good friends at Moltenon runs a CEDH commander deck with Vadrok at the helm, which is the
Jeskai one.
The Jeskai mutate legendary. It's only viable because it combos with Chef's Kiss. I'm gonna look. I'll just link Moltenon's video in the show notes so you can go check this out.
So we don't have to explain how that works.
But I was really curious and went on to Scryfall and looked up how many mutate cards actually came out in Ikoria. 39. That's
it's not very many.
And it's in all colors too.
Yeah.
Like that's across all colors of Magic.
True.
And so like Vadrok, for example, is just one commander that you can run, and it's only got 3 colors. It's red, white, blue.
Yeah.
So out of those 39, I'd have it a guess that maybe like a fifth of those would be blue, a fifth of them would be red, a fifth of them would be white. So like you're really limited with what you can get. But like you're totally right. There are some really good cards with mutate. Like, and they do the stuff that Commander wants to do.
Yeah.
Like for example, Migratory Great Horn. This is the one that whenever it mutates, you search your library for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So it's rampant growth every time it mutates.
Super sick.
Sea Dasher Octopus is a curiosity kind of effect.
Yep, when it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card.
Oh, there's also another rule that I just randomly remembered. You can't mutate onto humans. It has
That's right, it's got to be a non-human creature.
Weird thing.
The thing that I tried to mutate is a bit weirder, but there still weren't enough cards for it. It was a 3-color deck. It was, what's his name? He's the Frog Rider, the Sultai card from like... I forget what set he's even from.
He's from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
Yeah.
It starts with a T. It's Sultai. He makes a toad.
He makes a toad called Kami. So he says, when an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, if you don't control a creature named Kami, whatever it's called, Kami Toadlord or something, create Kami Toadlord that says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. So the thing with mutate you can do here is if you mutate on top of Kami...
Oh, he stops being legendary.
No, he's still legendary. His name isn't Kami anymore because the name of the card is the top card on the mutate chain.
Oh, it totally is. That's very clever.
So then you can cast enchantments and your commander says like, oh, you don't control a creature named Kami. Let's make another one. And every single one you make says when enchantments ETB drain your opponents.
Oh, so you're trying to go wide with mutates. Kind of thing, like
and also to then make it like an enchantment fall deck, like land fall, but enchantments, because you'll play a bunch of enchantments. It's like, okay, now you lose three, or whatever.
That's a cool commander to brew that round. I was just thinking of like Vadrok, Snapdax, and the ones
that have mutate that are legendary. Yeah, but
that's really cool.
There's totally other commanders out there that you could play mutate in the 99 of. But yeah, when I tried to brew this deck, this was 3 color. Keep in mind, this was Sultai. This was green, blue, black.
And to be fair, green and black, probably had the most mutate cards that I saw on Scryfall.
I'd say so.
It was probably the most common.
And even then, by the time I cut the ones that straight up did like nothing, like because there are mutate cards, like in any mechanic that they print, that are just like commons that suck.
There's one called like Porcuparrot, which I really liked the art of. I thought it was sick, but it's like a mutate card that says tap, it deals X damage, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I'm mutating something, I'm probably going to want to swing with it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be tapping it for stuff.
Stuff like that was just pretty bad. Yeah. Anyway, like I found by the time that I had like enough mutate creatures that I could mutate Kami and enough enchantments that it would work, the deck just straight up didn't work at all. Because I needed more mutate creatures, but when I was adding more mutate creatures, I was making the deck so much worse because I was having to include mutate creatures that just did nothing at all.
Well, I was thinking about like what we could do to make this mechanic better as well. If we were to go back to Ikoria or go to another, maybe we go to Lorwyn and Lorwyn's got some mutate stuff. That'd be pretty cool. But like if we go back to mutate, I think that there was a lot of cards in Ikoria that says whenever this creature mutates.
Yeah.
I would like a card, maybe an enchantment or an artifact that says whenever a creature mutates. So that way you can kind of go wide. Because one of the problems with mutate was you're investing all of these cards onto one stack of a creature.
Yeah.
And if it's your commander, we all know our commanders are lightning bolts for removal. It will just get removed, and it's like your opponent's going a 1 for 5.
Yeah.
Because they're using one removal spell on your stack of mutate creatures. And then there's a bunch of other weird things that you can do with it. Like if you flicker a mutate creature, the 2 card, like so let's say you've got a non-human and you've mutated once, you flicker that, it enters the battlefield again, but it enters as 2 separate creatures.
Yeah.
It doesn't re-enter as a mutate
They're not
stack.
mutated anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, look, even if they just revisited a mechanic like one that didn't exist at the time that they were making this, but is common now, Ward.
Oh, yeah, bit of protection on top of a mutate creature.
Just like a couple of mutate creatures that said Ward or Shroud or something. That would also make it more viable to go all in on something because you'd have a little bit of like a plan of like, oh no, it's pretty well protected.
Yeah.
It's not just going to die to a Chaos Warp.
I'd also really like, one mutate creature that says whenever this creature dies, return a non-human from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Oh yeah, like loop them a little bit.
Yeah.
That could work really well.
Make like a sacrifice loop. Maybe if there was a legendary creature that did that. So you could specifically sacrifice your commander to return something else to mutate your commander back on top of.
That sounds super fun.
Because you're still casting it from the command zone, mutate also incurs command attacks.
Yeah.
So I think even including things that you can loop with your commander, it's pretty safe because you're still casting it from your command zone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
I think Mutate's a cool one. There's something that recently came out, a mechanic in the Doctor Who sets that I thought was really cool. You've not played much of the Doctor Who though, have you?
I've seen the game nights, and that's about the extent of my interaction with it. Yeah.
I just unboxed my 2 precons, but I've played with other people's precons a couple of times.
Yeah, I've seen you in the games a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a mechanic called Villainous Choice that I think was awesome. It's similar to Will of the Council, the voting thing from, was it Ravnica?
Conspiracy originally, I think?
Yeah, and I think it also then came back in the original Ravnica block.
Okay. But Villainous Choice, this was the one where basically like either I get something or you lose something, right? That was the villainous choice that
it's
you would
always
follow.
good for me. I'm either depleting you of resources or gaining a benefit.
So I know like the commander that did this is Davros, right?
Yes, the Dalek creator himself.
Yes, and he says at the beginning of the end step, if one of your opponents has lost 3 or more life this turn, they face a villainous choice, which is either they discard a card or you get to draw a card.
Which is so cool as a mechanic.
So strong, too.
Yeah, and like the other cool thing that I really liked about the set was they kind of played into this loss of 3 life matters thing, which I really liked. So it's like a superpowered Sig, River Cutthroat. When you think about it, it's like, you know, if you get that damage through, and Daleks, by the way, are 3/3s with Menace.
Yeah, so that's the way you're supposed to get through, for sure.
Get the Daleks through, and then Davros can kind of take control. But like in the entirety of the Doctor Who set, which by the way, there was enough cards in there to make a full Magic the Gathering set. 4 commander decks basically mean full set. That's how many cards they're designing. 12 of them had Villainous Choice.
That's not very many.
It's not a lot. And I see why, though, because the commander decks are meant to be pulled apart and brewed like outside and, you know, with other things. So you could make a Villainous Choice deck, because there's Davros, there's also Missy, the other alternative commander in that deck. There's also the Master Gallifrey's End and the Valyard, which are all kind of really cool Grixis commanders or Rakdos commanders that you could build around with this. But I think just generally, like, the whole making your opponent choose what happens is one of those really fun commander decks where it's like, well, you can't be mad because you get to choose. Like, you could just say, I don't want to do the bad thing and get me the value.
Yeah.
But you can't blame me for drawing that many cards. I just really liked it. So I was looking at like, okay, if I was to build this, if I was to use Davros as the commander at the helm,
so Grixis,
how would I build it? And it was basically just like, oh, protect the shit out of Davros, and maybe just put in like a lightning bolt and stuff like that. Like, just get them to make the Villainous Choice over and over and over again until you can kind of win with like the little board state you have.
Yeah.
So just pack it full of board wipes, protect Davros like hell, and kind of just slowly overrun your opponents.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal deck, but I thought it was like a fun kind of idea.
Yeah,
but like,
definitely.
Yeah, there's heaps of things that you can do, and also Will of the Council is a really fun mechanic as well.
Oh, they could definitely bring back Will of the Council. I think it's like made for multiplayer formats.
Yes.
And it makes it's interesting. It's kind of like the Monarch. I don't think it's quite as fun as the Monarch, I would personally argue.
It doesn't end the game like the Monarch does.
It's
Monarch
also
really encourages the end of the game to come.
Once you've played against like a Tivit deck as well, that is all about voting, you realize that the voting is kind of always rigged. It's like Expropriate, right? Like, no one, you never lose with Expropriate. Whereas like Monarch has a sort of element of risk to it that I like, which is like, if you deploy Monarch early and you're like, maybe I can keep this for a couple of turns, and someone just straight away takes it from you with like a 1/1 flyer, has like a propaganda on their field, you're like, man, I've just given that person like 10 cards over the rest of the game. Whoopsie, yeah. But you like, you know, when you cast Expropriate, you don't lose anything.
No.
It's like,
I've never heard a story of Expropriate and the guy that cast Expropriate goes, oh, my opponent's just picked really well. Like, they really do.
Damn, like all I got was an extra turn and 3 more permanents. This sucks.
What a shit spell. It's like, have you ever heard a Tivit player cast Tivit and go, nah, I really could have used something else other than ramp and card draw. It gives you treasures and clues.
Oh no, don't give me clues. They only give me cards.
Don't give me treasures. That just gives me more mana to recast Tivit later. If you remove Tivit, I've made 2 treasures anyway because I vote twice, so it just pays for the command attacks anywho.
I want to see more of the voting cards where the voting matters more. They've gotten better at this, I think.
Where it's like, it could be very detrimental for the player that cast it too.
Yeah. There was a card... Is there a card in the Doctor Who set where you like secretly choose a vote? There's totally one in the Chaos deck, I think, where each player secretly votes and then you reveal the votes and like someone gets domed for 3 times the number of times that thing got voted.
And then someone gets to draw a card if they received no votes or something.
If they vote for the particular thing, you draw like 5 cards. Oh, so you draw some number of cards.
It's bizarre.
But like, yeah, if you're... Oh, you discard your hand and then draw a certain... I think it's a wheel. But like, yeah, the risk is like, oh, if there are people who don't wheel, they might take like 9 or 12 or something. And so there's like actually an element of like, what are other people going to vote for? What should I vote for? Like, I like when that is the element of the voting, and I would be so happy to see more of that.
I would love to revisit like the whole mechanic in like a main set, like we were kind
Will
of
of the
saying.
Council, just like, yeah, in a
Will of
set.
the Council, even if it was like Will of the Council and Villainous Choice, because I think they're kind of comparable. They're kind of making your opponents make a decision.
Yeah.
I really like those mechanics because I would like there to be a commander or maybe even just cards that say whenever your opponents make a choice, like whenever your opponents choose something, you get to do something, or they get to choose again, or every player that gets to vote votes twice, or something like that.
I like the sound of that because also there are cards on them that say like target opponent chooses.
Two.
Like
Even like Flame of Anor, the new Is It
Yeah,
Burn
yeah.
spell, it says choose 2.
Yeah.
All cards like that, you can either draw 2, discard 2, deal 5 damage, or destroy a target artifact, I think the other mode
Yeah.
is. So like anytime you have a modal spell and you have to choose something, if there's a kind of revisit to voting and people choosing stuff, maybe the voting and choosing thing could be a fun thing to play on.
Well, I was thinking even with the choosing, you could have cards like FAF, Fact or Fiction. That says like choose. So you could
that's
stack
true.
your deck full of cards that give your opponent a choice. They don't have to be Will of the
Yeah.
Council, but you could have like cards like Hostile Negotiations is the new black
sick.
Fact or Fiction. That would be a super sweet deck.
And the 7th Doctor from the new Doctor Who set also has like a weird choice thing involved.
Right.
Whenever you attack or whenever the Doctor attacks, you basically put a card from your hand face down.
Yeah.
And your opponent chooses whether it's a higher CMC than the amount of artifacts you control or a lower CMC than the amount of artifacts control.
Right.
If they get it right, you don't have to reveal the card, but you can draw a card. So it's like a free
Okay.
card draw. But then there's also, if they get it wrong, you can cast the card. So it's just this like kind of wild, like, and the other thing is you can pair it with like a bunch of the Doctor's companions that make clues or, investigate, make treasures, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of fun little game you can play with yourself of like, oh, maybe I should sack a bunch of treasures down so I can sneak this low drop into play. Or maybe I should build up my treasures to try and trick my opponent and sneak this 11 drop into play.
That's fun.
Cool mechanic.
You can't feel bad about that.
No, and I also love the Moxfield names that come up when people build decks like this. Like, you did this to yourself deck.
It's true. I reckon a mechanic I'd like to see again. We've kind of seen it intermittently in like it pops up on cards and often commander cards like individually, but it's not been given like a set in a while. Phasing?
Oh, yeah, like a Phasing Matters set would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like we've seen it pop up in standard sets. Like
we got
have
the Phasing of Zalfir.
Slip Out the Back.
Slip
was
Out the Back's
recent
pretty
one.
good.
Yeah, like so they're clearly willing to use it as a thing. But yeah, it would be good to give it like some time in the sunshine, and yeah, maybe like some cards that care about whether things have phase. Like whenever a thing you control phases in, do this.
Yeah,
That'd
be really cool. I will say that Theo my partner started brewing a commander called, excuse me, nearly burped, King of the Oathbreakers. It's one of the Lord of the Rings legendary creatures. It's a
This is the black-white one, yeah.
Yeah, and it says whenever a spirit you control phases in, create a 1/1 spirit.
Okay.
But it also says whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, phase out. It phases out. So basically the whole point of the deck is that you kind of target your own spirits to phase them out to make a board full of spirits and then win with like an anthem or spirit type effect.
It's fun.
Yeah,
It's a very fun design.
There's also some really old weird cards from like, 4th and 5th edition that say target any number of creatures you control.
Yeah, and suddenly
it's
that's
instant
like-
speed.
phase out your entire board.
It's like weird old style Teferi's Protection with this commander. I don't actually know what the rest of the text on those cards does because the only reason they're in Theo's deck
It's
is
just because they say choose any number of. Yeah,
target any.
It's
It's
probably
wild.
like each of them is now a golem until end of turn. Like, it's just like completely
Irrelevant
nonsense
text.
cards.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I will say that phasing is one of the mechanics that we could safely revisit for Commander as well, because like you said, we've seen it intermittently, like cards like Teferi's Protection.
Yeah, super commonly played.
Yeah, Robe of Stars as well is that new
Yeah.
equipment that you can pay 1 and a white and the equipped creature phases out.
Yeah.
That sees a ton of play now as like a protection for your commander.
Yeah.
I think that we could revisit this without like breaking new players' brains.
No,
either.
I think it would work really well in a standard set as well, because we've seen phasing used. Like, I think the original times phasing came up was because it was about like planeswalkers phasing out planes, right? Like planes of existence were phasing in and out. Like that lends itself so well to storytelling in Magic Story.
Yeah.
Like, it would be very, very easy to conceive of a standard set that's like, yeah, it's about the phasing of these two planes and what happens to the plane because of the phasing that happens there. Like that would be a really cool set.
Great storytelling opportunity too. You could you could set a magic set. You could have a magic set set on two planes and like have them mix and mingle and phase in and out of each other.
They could bring back the block structure and have that over two sets instead of one.
Please bring back the block structure.
I want to see two set blocks would be cool. I understand like 3 set blocks. People were like, it's too long. We get bored of it after a while. 2 set blocks could be really cool, especially for these big story beats they've been writing these days.
We did have 2 sets for the ones on Innistrad, Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt.
That's true. We could see something like that again.
That was a wedding. And we had a interdimensional planar disaster and a warfare that spread across every plane of existence.
Yeah.
And we got 1 set.
Yeah.
Oh, and an epilogue set with boosters that had 5 cards in
Yeah,
them.
half as many cards as a regular set. Yeah. We could totally get back to 2 set structures.
Definitely, especially if we're like, the story of Magic is getting is so epic, like multi-planar dimensional warfare, that kind of stuff.
Well, you heard it here first, Wizards, with our Christmas list. 2 sets. 2 sets in a block structure and all the mechanics.
Specifically back on Kaldheim.
Kaldheim,
There was so many untapped like story things that could have been done with Kaldheim.
Back to Kaldheim. Let's do it.
All right, next on the Christmas wish list, I would like to revisit Extort. Specifically, I know that there is already like life gain, life drain commanders, like Asterion from Baldur's Gate is ridiculous. Even Teysa, Karlov, that new one that just got previewed for Ixalan is also kind of wild. It makes 4/3 demons.
When you sacrifice something, the first time you gain 2, the second time each opponent loses 2, the third time you make a 4/3 flyer. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's cracked. But like...
So we should explain what Extort is quickly.
Yeah, totally true.
So when you cast... If you have something with Extort on your battlefield, when you cast a different spell...
Any spell.
Artifact,
creature, instant sorcery, whatever.
You pay hybrid Orzhov, so either white or black, and each opponent loses a life and you gain a life.
Yeah, which in 1v1 situations is kind of like
Yeah.
But in 4-player, you actually gain the amount of life lost, so you gain 3 life. I'm pretty sure that's how Extort works, right?
Oh, okay.
Or am I completely misreading this?
Look, even if it's not the case, the fact that you are effectively bolting in terms of the amount of damage you're doing, it's like a bolt around the table, right? It's the equivalent of it. But yeah, Extort is so cool, and there's some very, very, very playable and common Extort cards that we do see, like Blind Obedience.
Yeah, Cryptgast. Another really great one.
Great, yeah. This is the one that makes you swamp step for double mana. And Extort's really cool, by the way. This is like the one exception to the rule of like looking at the text box of a card and looking for the mana symbols and that telling you what the commander color identity is. Extort is in the reminder text, so you can play a white creature. Like there's a creature, I forget what it's called, but for 1 and a white, I think it's called Syndic of Tithys or Tithes or something. It's for 1 and a white. You get a creature that just is a 2/2 that says Extort on it. You can play that in a mono white deck, a blue white deck, wherever you want to play it. It doesn't have to be white and black.
Yeah, so for if you're running a mono white commander, you can still run Blind Obedience, which is a mono white card, but it has Extort, even though it can be paid for with black mana. It's not in the rules text, so
in
therefore
the reminder text.
Yeah.
It's so weird, but yeah, it's legal. It's cool.
I just googled it. 100%. I was right. You gain life equal to the life lost this way.
That is so good.
So you gain 3, and your opponents lose 1. That's like
for 1 mana. Well, and again, it's like a bolt around the table, right? Because it's each opponent. Yeah, this Extort is so strong. You see it played, and you're like, this looks okay. And then someone does it like 4 times in one turn. They cast like 3 2-drops and just pay 1 extra for each of them, and it's like, I just lost 4 and they just gained 12.
That seems ridiculously high value. And there's
it's
also
so good.
We have, just thinking about it, there is a card from Nuka Penna. So that's like a year ago. No, 2 years ago?
A year ago? That
Year
sounds-
ago?
Oh, who even knows anymore?
Since 2020, I forgot what year it
I know,
is.
right?
But, the life insurance card from Nuka Penna. It's like whenever a creature your opponent controls dies, you create a treasure or gold.
It's a treasure, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
And it also has extort on it.
Yeah.
And it's just like a pretty cool mechanic that you could just slap on to any relatively decent card to make it a little bit more powerful. There's also an incredibly cool top end, which I've always wanted to play around because I have one in my collection, but I've never found a deck for it. It's called Pontiff of Blight, or Blight of Pontiff.
I've just put this into my Aristocrats deck, my Mardu Aristocrats deck. This is
I think it's sick.
6-mana creature that says creatures you control have extort.
Yes.
And so basically, extort is kind of like exalted, where it stacks, right?
Yes.
So if you cast a spell and each of your creatures has extort, you could pay, let's say you have 5 creatures, you could play Hybrid Orzhov 5 times, and each opponent loses 5, and you gain 15.
It's kind of nuts.
And that's just from casting one spell.
Yeah, and it's basically like taxing yourself, but giving yourself so much other value from it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could like storm off and do this if you have like a way to, and there's also like, I think it would be like cool for those combo players that are looking for ways to win with infinite mana. Like if you can infinite mana cast reiterate combo and infinite mana pay for extort, you win the game.
That's fun.
That's pretty cool, right? That's a cool combo.
It's a fun win con for sure for infinite mana,
I think there's like a deck strategy that could be built around extort if we had more cards that did it. Because the only cards that are playable are Blind Obedience and Cryptghast. Tithe Drinker is one that I see a bit of play.
Yeah.
But like Ponza Blighter, I think you could play that in your Mardu list. You're generating quite a bit of mana, and you're kind of a grindy deck. You want to last for a long time.
Yeah.
But I never found a deck for Pontiff of Blight.
Yeah.
Is it Pontiff of Blight or Pont Blighteth?
Pontiff of Blight.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I had that in my head completely backwards. I couldn't remember what it was called.
Happens to the best of us.
But it's also like a 3/7 body as well. From memory. It's a weird creature.
I think it's definitely the thing that Extort has going forward that some of the mechanics we've mentioned so far don't, is that it's very easy. I mean, we saw with life insurance, it can just be snuck into a commander product very easily.
Yes.
So they can just like, this is one that doesn't necessarily need to have a set of Extort cards.
No.
They could just go, all right, every third commander deck that comes out will just like chuck an Extort card in there.
A couple of cards in there, here and there. Yeah.
Put in a life gain deck. It's sweet.
Next on the Christmas list?
I want to shout out a mechanic that I think people are sleeping on 100%, which is Melee.
Oh, yeah.
This is, the card that I play with Melee is Adriana, Captain of the Guard, which is admittedly one of the better versions of it.
That's the legendary Boros commander that says creatures you control have Melee, right? Yeah.
So Melee is a mechanic that says when a creature with Melee attacks, for each other creature you attack, each other player you attacked this combat, the creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So the really great thing about this for Commander is it incentivizes swinging wide.
Yeah.
It's like the very Boros thing, right?
So you could get +3/+3 if you're swinging at all of your opponents.
Across the board. And Adriana, Captain of the Guard is like probably the best version of this because it gives your other creatures melee as well. So when you swing, and even if Adriana doesn't swing, if it's on the board and you swing at your 3 opponents, everything gets +3/+3. Well, it can be a win con in the right deck.
1/1 soldiers effectively can be read as 3/3 soldiers in combat.
Or 4/4s.
Yeah, 4/4s. Yeah, true. Yeah.
Really good.
If you're swinging at all 3 opponents, it gets +3/+3, base power 1/1, 4/4. James can do math, everybody.
They've actually recently added a one-off one of these that I've been meaning to pick up for a while. I forget what it's called. It's called like Sky Knight Legionnaire. I might be remembering wrong. It's like Sky Knight something that says it's got Lieutenant, another mechanic which would be cool to see again.
Yeah, that's the one at the beginning of combat. If you control your commander, do what the Lieutenant ability says.
Yes, there's like one card that doesn't do it at the beginning of combat, but most of them say at the beginning of combat, blah, blah. This one says, Lieutenant, if you control your commander, creatures you control have melee.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But it's a 3-mana body. So Adriana's 5, which is probably fair. So paying 3 to get +3/+3 across the board is pretty great.
I'd like to see the whole, because I think the conspiracy set had Monarch, had Melee, in it, had a lot of this stuff. I reckon we should just revisit that whole kind of way of playing multiplayer Magic.
Yeah, just like a multiplayer specific set.
Yeah.
Like a one-off, like not a Commander product and
not a Commander Masters,
No.
not that kind of stuff. Because, yeah, the Commander Masters draft environment is, in my opinion, getting better every single time they do it.
Yeah.
Commander Masters 2? No.
Commander Legends.
Commander
you mean.
Legends was the draft environment.
They've effectively
and it
done
was great.
3 Commander draftable sets now, right?
Yeah.
They've done Commander Legends, Battle for Baldur's Gate, and Commander Masters, and all of those were draft environments for Commander, right?
And they're getting so much better. Like the addition with Commander Masters being able to pair, or basically monocolored legendary creatures and planeswalkers having partner, made the draft environment so cool. I really liked that. But yeah, if we revisited a multiplayer set that kind of cared about Monarch, cared about Melee, cared about all of these kind of like caring that you have more than one opponent, I think we'd get some really cool interactions where we could get cards that say at the end step, if you attacked all of your opponents, because remember, if like you have an opponent that got knocked out, then you've got 2 opponents, you've got 2 people to swing at. It says like if you attacked all of your opponents, you get to draw a card or something like that. It really incentivizes you to swing out and swing aggressively at all players.
I mean, at this point, are we happy to just say we want to see Conspiracy 2?
Electric Boogaloo, yes, 100%.
I would 100% be happy to just see Conspiracy 2 and just, chock it full of mechanics that care about more than one opponent. Encore, even.
Encore would be sick.
Love the Encore mechanic from Commander Legends.
Your Arami deck is one of your favorites.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just so fun. It's like, you can't feel too bad about it, you know? Because you have to have a certain number of opponents. Like, it gets worse as your opponents get eliminated.
True.
I like mechanics that care about your opponents staying in the game.
Imagine combining melee creatures with Encore. Because you would have to attack with... That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
100%.
I do think we've got, like, commanders that care about attacking already. Like, you can think of, like, Wolfgar of Icewind Dale and Ishin Two Heavens as one. All of these commanders, like, double attack triggers. So if you've got, like, Exalted, that stuff doubles.
Yeah.
That incentivizes you to attack. What I really want here is incentivized to go wide.
Yeah,
and I think
attack
melee,
multiple opponents.
You got the nail on the head. Melee is the right way to go for that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, even like, what's the Boros legend? What's it? Nahiri that cares about attacking. You draw a card for each opponent you attacked this turn with an equipped creature or
and
something.
then you can pay. I think it's a white mana to unequip an equipment and give it indestructible. To end the turn.
Yeah.
It's not a Kiri Line Slinger. That's the one that gets a power creep.
I think it's Nahiri. Oh, look, I can't recall exactly.
No, it's Akiri.
Akiri.
I think it's Nahiri's sister, maybe
Who
cousin.
knows? I think
Long lost related mum.
She's core. Is Nahiri a core?
Yeah.
Oh,
100%.
okay.
That's why they got like
person.
the porcelain grey skin.
It's
kind
very
of thing.
cool design.
I like Zendikar as a set. We've visited it enough.
We have.
But yeah,
it's
Zendikar's
a cool place to
set.
go, definitely. Well, we've talked about a lot of mechanics, and it's been going for quite a while already. I reckon it might be time for a thrifty interlude.
Yeah, thrifty interlude.
So we've got lots of stuff to talk about, including all those legendary creatures that we want to see for our commander decks. But before that, we're going to hear a little something about a thrifty card. And as is tradition, I will be performing a monologue. And this week, it's the Cowled Merchant with some new wares. James, would you like to read the card we're featuring this week?
I sure would. Another mechanic on this card that we could totally revisit was in Ikoria, but we could go back there again.
I mean, it's been 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. So it's Edge of Autumn. For 1 and a green, you get a sorcery. That's the mechanic I want to revisit.
You do not want to visit Sorcery Speed again, you liar.
Instant. Actually, there was a new, very off subject thing. There was a new card spoiled today for a new artifact for Ixalan. And it's a 1 and a black, and you can tap and sacrifice, I think, an artifact creature or something else to draw a card.
I saw this, but it's only as a sorcery.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, this looks sick. Only as a sorcery. Never mind. Yeah, I don't care.
James yawned when he wrote that line of text.
Never mind, threw it in the bin. Edge of Autumn. It's 1 and a green for a sorcery. If you control 4 or fewer lands, search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, tapped, and then shuffle. And it also has cycling. Sacrifice a land.
Finding yourself foggy and wistful and wish these cold months would just come to an end? Even worse, are you finding yourself living in that future time rather than the here and now? Introducing time itself! I suppose I've introduced that before. Scratch that. Introducing the knowledge that time is constant and variable. All times can be now in the human subjective experience of anti-chronological phenomenology, even next month. But you knew that. What you didn't know is that all times are accessible from this current moment if you give your mind a moment to slow down. Slow down! Live in the future and leave your body in the now, like when you're really sad. Or when you're really happy? I don't know. Imagine that everything you do is meaningful, but you don't understand why yet. Anyway, it'll be autumn soon. Oh no! Imagine you're a huge flightless bird! That's way more amusing! For me, get budgeted!
You know what I really like? We got more Thrifty Thursdays lore here.
Uh-huh.
It's confirmed that he progresses through time chronologically because he's already referenced and the fact that he's introduced time itself already, and he knows us as an audience. I think there's some lore to be uncovered here.
I think he experiences it chronologically, but I think he can jump anywhere he wants because he's everywhere across the multiverse.
Is it like kind of like a Doctor Who River Song thing where they meet, where we and the Cowed Merchant meet out of order, and it's like a bit of a...
Someday we'll witness his birth. Yeah, no, basically, yeah. If you enjoyed that, you can experience those in text form every Thursday when they're released in the Greensboro Commander Community Discord server in the Thrifty Thursdays channel. That server is linked in the show notes.
Yeah, and it's a good place to hang out with all of us and our friends and talk about Commander, which is the second half of our Christmas wish list.
Yes, we want some legendary creatures, planeswalkers, vehicles, backgrounds, any of those various things that can go in the command zone.
Wow, just realizing you run that string of stuff, I'm like, usually when you explain Commander, you go, right, Commander's a version of Magic where you build around one legendary creature.
Yep.
But there totally are many things that you can have in your command zone now.
It's true. At least backgrounds mean that one of your commanders is an actual legendary
That's
creature.
true. And planeswalkers and vehicles have to have that line of text on them that says, this can be your commander.
Yeah, whack.
Weird.
Anyway, yes.
I've got one that I immediately thought of because I've been wanting to play around with this mechanic for ages.
Yeah.
But bloody Wizards of the Coast started spoiler season for the Fallout Commander decks and ruined my whole thing.
Yeah.
I want an energy commander.
Oh.
And lucky me, Fallout, New Vegas, or no, whatever, the Fallout.
The Fallout's commander sets decks that they're doing.
We're getting basically Fallout decks like they did with Doctor Who.
And like with Warhammer 40k, like the commander decks themed around a non-magic IP with magic cards in them.
Have you ever played Fallout?
No.
Neither have I.
No.
My partner's obsessed with it. And I know one of our listeners, Brad, is a huge Fallout fan. He's still playing the mobile game that they brought out like years ago.
Okay.
And got like big for a bit. And I think he's probably one of 4 that are still playing it. Massive multiplayer game. 4 people.
Yeah. I mean, look at this. You know, you're like fingers on the pulse when you think to yourself, like, man, we haven't seen this in a while, and then Wizards do it, and you're like, yeah,
I was right.
But it also hurts.
Best mates.
It hurts for an episode that we were lining up about things we want to see, and then it's like, oh no, we're seeing it.
This also shows how far advanced we're recording our episodes.
Shh, don't tell them. It's secret.
But yes, I have
Energy
just pulled.
Commander. Yeah,
I have just pulled the spoiler up. It's Dr. Madison Lee.
Okay.
It's a Jeskai commander, blue, red, and a white, 3 mana, which is actually pretty good for the amount of lines of text on it. It's a human scientist. Scientist is a cool creature type that I want to see more of. Because Davros is a scientist as well. Maybe we could do like a Universes Beyond scientist typal deck.
Helmed by Albert Einstein. No.
Brilliant. That would be hilarious. Universes within Earth. It's a 2/3. It's got a bunch of text on it, but it says whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get an energy. You can tap it, pay an energy. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample and haste until end of turn.
Okay.
It also has tap it, pay 3 energy, draw a card.
Cool.
It also has tap it and pay 5 energy. Had to count the amount of energy
I know,
symbols
they lay them out in a row, don't they?
5 energy. Return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That is a cool energy commander.
That's fun. I mean, it's not giving you any energy, right? So
You have to.
This is the payoff.
No, whenever you cast an artifact spell, get an energy. So
Oh,
it's
never mind.
incentivizing like a Jeskai.
This guy artifacts.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
That does sound really cool.
I know nothing about how flavorful or on point it is, but that seems like a great commander.
But like, how many energy commanders have you ever seen?
I mean, zero.
Zero.
Yeah,
But-
aside from this one. Now, one.
One. I've seen one. But like, the Aether Revolt set was the set that we got. It was set on Kaladesh with all the Aether born creatures, but also the Aether is like the energy. I believe the Kaladeshians convert mana into Aether, which is like
Okay.
the thing they use to pilot or fuel all their vehicles and
that sounds
creations
right.
and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And there were 71 cards that cared about energy, made energy, or used energy from the set.
Wow, so this is already a significant up on the numbers we looked at for like Mutate, for
Yeah.
instance. This is like double the number of cards Mutate has.
Exactly, but there was no real viable... I guess you could be like, I'm going to play Atraxa. Energy. That's just boring.
Oh, yeah.
Because you
I
can
mean,
proliferate energy cannons.
But the problem is that, like, it's boring to use a commander that could do so many other things.
And do so many other things better than it
Yeah.
does energy.
Like Atraxa, you can build a proliferate deck, you can build an infect deck, you can build a planeswalker deck. All of those work because it just says proliferate on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more interesting brewing around a legend that specifically cares about the thing. So yeah, I mean, great that they've printed one.
Yeah.
But I want to see more energy commanders and maybe just more energy in general. I know we've already talked about mechanics, but I'd be happy to see it again.
I'd be happy to see it again too. I think if you are to print a legendary that cares about energy, you would probably need to up that 71 cards because like
Yeah, maybe
71
this is-
again is across all 5 colors. So Jeskai, I assume that in the
Maybe
Fallout decks we'll
50
get
cards or something, but it'll get more
Yeah,
of them. Yeah,
exactly.
It's probably the kind of thing that needs. Maybe the Fallout decks will do it, but yeah, it's like the cycling deck they made as part of Commander 2020, right? Like they had a couple of reprints of the cycling cards, but they also just added a bunch of new ones because they were like, look, we can give you a cycling commander, but in order for you to have some tools to play with, you're going to need a few more cards.
You could also play Edge of Autumn in that deck as well.
Oh no, you couldn't because that'd be illegal. It's a Jeskai deck.
Oh, you totally can. Well, I was thinking like when you're talking about when we revisited cycling for Ikoria.
Yes. We could bring
play
that back,
Yeah.
100%.
But like, I think the reason why I want energy as a commander is because I've talked quite a lot about how Magic the Gathering at heart is a resource management game.
Yeah.
And energy is just one more resource to manage.
Yeah.
It's like another thing that, your opponents can't deplete it. It's really hard for your opponents to deplete, so you have to manage your energy resources quite well for like, I'm building them up or using them now.
Yeah.
And I think that commander that we just looked at, that scientist that we looked at, was a really good example. Like, you can tap it and pay 1 energy to do a little thing.
Yeah.
Or you can tap it to reanimate something and spend a lot more energy.
Or 3 energy to draw a card, yeah.
I kind of like how that plays out in a commander game because it's like, oh, I could go really quick and fast with little bits of energy and kind
Yeah.
of shoot little sparks, or I could save it up and try this like turn 12 explosion, win the game on turn 12 kind of thing.
Yeah, I like energy as well as a mechanic that, yes, it's something you have to keep track of, but also it's something you're keeping track of that your opponents can see.
Yes.
So they might not necessarily know your lines and know how you're going to get energy and how much you're going to spend.
You could be like, oh, you've got a lot of counters.
Yeah, they can just look over and be like, okay, you've got 20 energy there. Like, I've got to do something about
Yeah.
this because I know your deck is built to utilize this resource. So I like it being public knowledge in that way.
But yeah, I
for
think
sure.
that would be a sick mechanic to revisit. But yeah, legendary creatures that care about energy.
Yeah.
Maybe we just go back to Kaladesh. Maybe this wish list is actually just what sets we want to revisit and what planes.
In our new 2-block structure wizards, we
Yes.
told you 2-block structure.
Also something we'd like.
It's true. A commander I want. I really want to see. There's a bunch of these already, but none of them are good. I want to see a spirit type commander, but that does the things that spirits do.
Because we just spoke about the fact that Theo's built that phasing spirit type
Yeah.
commander, but that's not really a spirity thing.
It's not so like having looked at this a bunch of times myself and attempted to build spirit decks a bunch of times. There's a few things that spirits do. There's like a sort of subset that's the spirit / arcane stuff. This is from the original Spirit Kez cares about things in Kamigawa block.
The
way
original
back when.
Kamigawa block.
Yes, the block structure. Block structure. In that block, there was things that cared about like, arcane spells, which was a subtype of instance.
Yep.
And there were, or maybe sorceries as well. I think
There
they
are
were just
subtypes of sorceries as well.
Okay,
'Cause
subtypes of instant sorceries.
You can splice some things onto arcane spells.
That's
so you can
right.
cast,
Splice onto arcane was like another thing.
Yeah, you can splice onto. That'd be a cool mechanic to
Yeah.
revisit. Anyway,
so there's like a subset that care about casting spirit/arcane spells. That's fair. There are like valid commanders that care about spirits dying. There's like a little bit of a thing of spirits going to the graveyard
like
and triggering stuff.
Kakusho
Yeah.
is like a really good example
So
of this.
again, the OG Kamigawa cares about that kind of stuff, and they've added support for those kinds of decks. What they haven't done is cover everything else that spirits have done since then.
like across the multiverse.
Well, yeah, because spirits pop up pretty frequently, and
Yeah.
they very frequently do the same things. They care a lot about tapping stuff, and they care a lot about flash. So what I want to see is I want to see a blue-white commander. I don't care if it's not itself a spirit, though it would be nice if it was, that cares about maybe flash, tapping stuff, maybe even ETBs enter the battlefields. Maybe it enhances ETBs in some ways. I'm not saying print another fucking Panharmonicon style thing. We don't need that.
We've already got another one from Eldraine, the blue enchantment that doubles ETBs.
Yes, yeah, they just printed that, and that's
Yeah.
got like it's the adventure one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't need any more of that, but like maybe it says like when the spirit ETBs do this, something like that enhances the ETBs.
And cares about the spirit type.
Yes,
Yeah.
and or flyers. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
care about flyers because spirits already have flying. Flying is already very good. You don't need to buff that so much. But yeah, I want a commander that cares about some combination of tapping things, flash, and ETBs
Sure.
specifically for spirits. And I just feel like the ones we have so far, for reference, the ones that I've been looking at and have tried brewing before, there's Millicent, which is the one from Crimson Vow Commander, I want to say. Cares
Yeah.
about your spirits dying, being put into the graveyard.
There was another face commander from one of the commander products that also...
Raynar, I think,
that
from
was the one.
Kaldheim cares about casting things from exile. It basically was a foretell. It was a foretell deck first and a spirit deck second.
And it made spirits when you cast spells from exile, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it did.
right.
But that deck, again, this is like the support is there, like it's making spirits, it's doing spirit things, but it's not supporting the spirits you want to play. I've talked about this before, but like I don't like when you build a deck that cares about a creature type, but doesn't want that type in the deck. You know what I mean? Like I've talked about this a few times before about Kaikar. Wind's Fury, right? This is the one that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make a spirit, sack a spirit, add red.
I really liked this deck.
I
really liked how you built this deck.
It's a really, really cool deck, but the thing is, it cares about casting non-creature spells. So actually, the best version of a Kaikar deck doesn't play spirits in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
'cause
can't build a spirit deck out of it because you're not going to include 25, 30 spirits in there because that's actually making your deck worse.
Yeah, the thing that I noticed, we've talked about this before with your Kaikar deck, was the thing that happened when you realized what the commander did for the deck was too good and it meant that you should lean into it more. And you took all the spirits out. That's what happened. And you took it apart because you were like, this isn't the deck I wanted it to be. And it's now like an instant speed storm off deck.
Yeah.
That's not what I care about.
And it's not what I set out to build either. I set out to build a spirit deck, and I still haven't found the right commander for it. The closest I've gotten is actually the partner with from Commander 2020. I think that it is Rhoda and Timon. One of them.
I think I've seen this. They actually reference spirits on them, right?
One of them, no, they care about tapping stuff, which is why it could work.
Right.
One of them says at the beginning of at the beginning of each combat, tap up to one target creature an opponent controls.
Sure.
Which is great. It's like a 5 mana body. The other one's like 4 mana and says whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped and isn't being declared as an attacker, I believe is what it says on there, put a +1 counter on it, and it has vigilance.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So you kind of build like a Voltron-y kind of thing, but because it cares about tapping stuff, you can kind of go for down the spirit route. But again, neither of these cards say spirits on them. You know?
I also just hate partner commanders that both cost like 5 mana each.
That was the problem I had when I built it, is it was like, this deck works if I draw really good 1, 2, and 3 drops, cast my commanders on time, and never have them removed. And it's like, that's the glass cannon. We've talked about that on the podcast before.
Every commander deck works well if that happens, right?
Right?
So
yeah.
I get that.
Problem.
I feel like spirits are so frequently visited on every plane, every set, that you could easily find the type of creature spirit
Yeah.
to put in a deck. We just need that legendary creature to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's close. It's really close, but it's just that one card away.
Speaking of types,
Yes.
I have a type that I've always wanted to build around. I think you know what I'm talking about because I've talked about it with you before.
I think I do.
Phoenix type.
Yeah.
I love phoenixes, just like in general. I think they're a sick mythical creature. The fact that they die, come back to life, I think it's this symbol of rebirth. I think it's really cool. If anything, I'll probably end up with a tattoo of a phoenix at some point.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. But
They demonstrate, like, they're one of those things that has ported across from, like, mythology into Magic so seamlessly because they've nailed the flavor.
yes,
Like,
well, they die and come back.
Yeah.
And they usually come back fiery, hasty, come back in tapped and attacking.
Yeah.
Like,
they care about instant sorcery. So, like,
Yeah.
most really good Phoenix decks care about you, like, bolting stuff. And it's like, how cool that a Phoenix rises from fire.
yeah.
You know, that
you
is...
have to burn to get the phoenix back.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I think the flavor of Phoenix is incredible. The problem is there are only 2 legendary Phoenixes. Phoenixes? Phoenixes.
Phoenixes.
It's Phoenixes, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
probably.
I'm assuming so.
It doesn't matter, most importantly.
But there's only 2 legendary Phoenixes that exist. There's one called Authori, Sun's Glory, but that actually cares about the rebel creature type.
Oh, well, that's a write-off. We're not going to play that in our Phoenix
It
thing.
literally like gives you 2/2 rebels and all that kind of stuff. So it's not actually going to build a Phoenix deck. There is another one called Cyrix, Syrix, Carrier of the Flame for 2 red and a black. It's a 3/3 with flying and haste. Love that for a Phoenix.
Yeah.
At the beginning of each end step, if a creature card left your graveyard this turn, target Phoenix you control deals damage equal to its power to any target. Then it says, whenever another Phoenix you control dies, you may cast Cyrix from your graveyard. So firstly,
Okay.
I've looked at this commander a bunch.
Yeah.
I've been kind of pining over this commander for a while. I think it came out in New Capenna. Yeah, New Capenna.
Yeah.
And I've been pining over it for a while. The problem is, all the Phoenixes that exist are like 2 or 3 power. Maybe 4. So that line of text where you're like trying to burn with powerful Phoenixes doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I can see that it's so close.
It's so close.
It's so close.
You can see they probably set out and were like, we don't want to make it too strong. Like, we don't want to make a commander that nobody likes playing against. And in the process, they probably just slightly underpowered it.
Yeah.
It's pretty sweet, though.
It's really cool. And I've tinkered with it a few times on Moxfield to see if it's possible. The problem is there's only I think there's maybe 40 or something actual Phoenixes within the colors.
I wonder whether it would have been viable if they included white. I feel like there's a couple of
Maybe.
Phoenixes in red white.
Well, Orthai, the rebel one, the rebel type
red
is
white.
Boros. Yeah, it's
I wonder
red white.
if maybe if they just made it Mardu, like the exact same line of text and had white in there.
Yep.
There'd be more ways to reanimate. There'd be more ways to put stuff in the yard.
But also, I just really like a commander that cares about this burn and reanimator strategy. So a commander that would say at the beginning of your end step, if you've dealt 5 non-combat damage to an opponent, return a Phoenix from your graveyard. And it also says whenever a Phoenix enters, do something. So you can kind of loop reanimate stuff. Then it could be like a kind of cool aristocrats non-token, sack your Phoenixes to get value out of them.
And incentivizes you to, we talked about the flavor of the burn and Phoenixes coming from the burn. I like the idea of non-combat damage being involved in the Phoenixes there, because that's missing on this, on Cyrix, right?
Yeah. I think you could also do something where you could reanimate another creature from your graveyard, and it is like a kind of Scarab Goddy type thing.
Oh,
where
it makes something into a Phoenix.
Turns it into a 3/3 Phoenix with flying. So it makes it base power toughness 3/3, but gives it flying.
Sort of solves the problem that we run into with types that aren't that supported.
Because
there's
only,
if there's only 20
30 something
play,
Phoenixes
in
total.
So probably most of those are bad, or maybe half of those are not playable. So they might need that little bit of support by having a card that makes more of them. Yeah, for sure.
All right. What's next on your Christmas wish list?
A
new bike.
It's more creature types.
Of course.
This one's kind of the anti-creature type deck.
So it cares about not having the same creature type on field.
Yes. So they've
Right.
done this with Volo, right? They've
Oh,
done...
yeah, they totally did.
This is Volo Guide to Monsters, I think he's called. The Simic one that's like whenever you cast a creature spell, if it doesn't share a creature type with a creature card on your battlefield or in your graveyard...
You make a clone of it, right?
You make a token copy of it. So
that's
like,
so cool.
That does it, but it's in Simic. I want like a 5-color, to be honest, thing. I just like realized there's like they've printed quite a few cards now, and I've done some Scryfall searches for this, and I've built the very, very bare bones shell of what this deck might look like. There are a lot of cards that say like non-human, non-angel, non-frog on them, non-juggernaut.
You're so right. I actually just thought of a card that I recently took out of my Liesa Shroud of Dust deck because I misread it so hard. It's the Bolt land from Zendikar Rising.
Oh, the white one.
It makes a bunch of angels.
Makes 2 angels with vigilance, and non-angel creatures you control gain indestructible until your next turn.
Correct. Why non-angels
I
if
know.
you make angels? It's like, that's such a weird, like the angels coming down to save you kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I get that theme, I get it, but like, that's such a weird line of text. But a deck that kind of would play on that would be really cool.
This is like the anti-typle. Like I've talked about the typle
Or like the
deck before.
Morophon type decks.
Yeah, where
and-
people like play like Captivating Vampire and then a bunch of changelings and like steal stuff because that cares about vampires. I'm saying the opposite, right? Like all
Sure.
these different cards they've balanced by saying non-frog, non-human on them to make them a little less busted. If you had all of them in the one deck,
I like
and
it.
a commander that cared about all these different creature types that you're playing, they could be kind of sick.
How would you word it? Like maybe
I think the Volo wording works, but I don't like clones. I think clones are a bit boring.
making token copies of
Yeah.
stuff. Maybe it's like if you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type amongst creatures you control. It's the same as Volo.
Yeah.
You draw a card, like just to get
Yeah.
like a draw engine going.
Yeah, the
because
draw
like,
engine in the command zone might make it fine.
because
yeah.
like it is a very low powered deck because it's a bunch
Yeah.
of you're trying to run a bunch of cards that synergize with each other because they don't synergize with each
Yeah.
other. So it's a bit of a weird line to walk.
I
You just
wonder
want to
if-
give it a bit of incentive or a bit of
I think card draw would be good. I think it wouldn't be quite there with just card draw. Maybe like a line of text that says like, this is just like completely spitballing, but like at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control like gains a creature type of something else or like loses
yeah.
a creature type. Like maybe it's like loses all creature types until end of turn.
so
And then
you
you
could
can do
make it
some
like
weird
anti-creature type deck.
Yeah, so like if you have that thing that cares about like non-humans and you've got like your human on the board, then it could be like, okay, I'm gonna make this not human till end of turn, do the weird non-human thing, mutate
that'd be
onto
pretty
the non-human
cool.
creature now.
That'd be weird. What about a static ability on the commander that says something like creatures you control get +1/+1 for each creature they don't share a type with on your battlefield.
Like the anti-coat of arms.
anti-coat of arms.
That's fun.
That's pretty sick.
That's pretty sweet. I reckon this has to cost Wooburg. I think this has to cost...
You have to be in all colors to make this viable.
Yeah, but I think like having played a couple of commanders now that actually cost Wooburg to cast, like white, blue, black, red, green, it's very restrictive. You have to ramp really well. Your mana base has to be really good.
Your
you have
commander's
to curve
usually
well.
not coming out until turn 5 or turn 6.
Sometimes later.
Unless you're doing the perfect turn 2 ramp to color
Yeah.
fix, then it comes out on turn 4. But yeah, 99% of the time, Wooburg commanders are coming out on turn
later
5.
than that. Yeah. So yeah, I think if this cost Wooburg, I like that line of text a lot actually. Yeah, draw a card when things, do the Volo thing, but draw a card.
Yeah.
And then creatures get buffed by how many creatures they don't share a type with. That's sweet. I would so build that deck.
This could be a really cool Ikoria thing to revisit, I reckon.
Oh yeah,
Good on
because that
Ikoria.
also has like so many different.
Well, they're beasts,
They had like
monsters and stuff.
dinosaurs and cats and everything. So
That'd be cool.
That would be fun. I
All
like
right,
that.
another not typal deck to move away from it on my
Okay.
wish list would be a commander that cares about clones. Now, I'm not saying like a clone commander because we got Sakashima already.
Yeah.
It's just the objectively best one.
It makes you so you can clone legendary creatures. It's
It's
great.
also got partner, so you can slap another commander in the command zone. It's
Yep.
incredible. We've also got the Master Multiplied, which I think is super cool.
I saw this. It cares about clones, right?
Yeah, it says the legendary rule doesn't apply to tokens you control.
That's right.
But he has Myriad. So the whole idea of it is
Yeah.
that you make a bunch of Myriad tokens and then the busted line of text, and this is why this commander costs 6, is effects can't make you sacrifice or exile tokens.
Right, so the myriad line of text normally is create for each opponent other than the one you're attacking, create a token copy of this creature attacking that opponent.
Yep.
Sacrifice them at the end of combat.
So the whole point of this commander is that you swing with the master, make 2 tokens of him. They stay because the legend rule doesn't apply to them.
And then you don't sacrifice them
Yeah.
because you can't sacrifice tokens. Super sweet.
The wild thing is as well, the tokens also have myriad. So next turn, you're exponentially growing the master.
I never clocked that.
Yeah.
That is busted.
I kind of want to build it as
Yeah,
well. But like,
that's very you.
The thing that I'm talking about and the thing that I want, because that already exists, what I want is a commander that cares about you cloning stuff. Not
Right.
like of your own stuff. I would like it to care about your opponent's stuff. So like a commander that says like, creatures you control that share a name with a creature an opponent controls get flying or get a buff of some kind. Because I think or maybe like at the end step, if you control a creature with the same name as an opponent, draw a card. Or maybe it's like for each creature you control with the same name as an opponent, draw a card.
Yeah.
There's also like cards like Evil Twin, for example, that's like a clone, but you can tap Evil Twin because it gives it the additional ability to tap and destroy something with the same name.
Yeah.
I would love if
Very
you could
fun
like,
card.
But imagine like flickering Evil Twin and just like cloning your opponent's stuff and slowly killing everything. I think that'd be sweet.
I think so too. I reckon the commander we can use as a starting point here for this deck is John Arenicus.
I've never heard of this.
Okay, this is from Baldur's Gate. Again, underrated set. So good.
Yeah.
That's
why we gave a box away.
Yeah, it's true. 2 blue black. It's a 3/3 elf wizard. At the beginning of your end step, target opponent gains control of up to 1 target creature you control. Put 2 counters on it and tap it. It's goaded for the rest of the game and it can't be sacrificed.
Wow.
Whenever a creature you own but don't control attacks, you draw a card.
Ooh,
So I'm thinking this, but kind of the inverse, right? Of like if you have tokens, like something like beginning of combat or end step or something. If you have a creature that shares a name with a creature your opponents control, do this thing.
That's cool.
And
I
then
really
like
like this idea.
goad or something. Like there's something there.
There's definitely something there. Do you want to know why I really want this? Is because this would be a great place for the new Doctor Who card Psychic Paper. I think that card is so unplayable in Commander, but I think the card itself is sick. For those that don't know, Psychic Paper, it's an equipment. When you equip it to a creature, you choose a name of a creature. Of magic.
Yeah.
Any Garth One Eye, Razaketh, Foul-Blooded, whatever you want. And the creature has that name. It doesn't do anything else really, but it's a really weird card. The things that I've noticed it does is get around Pithing Needle. I think that's sick.
That's fun.
But also it just would make stuff that it would be a really cool thing if your commander cared about your creatures having the same name as an opponent's creatures.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
I think it would be fun. 100%.
Deck.
My last request on my Christmas list is back to the commander creature types again.
Shocker. I feel like I did one. I'd got like Phoenix type, and you're like, what about like a spirit type, a non-typal type, a type this, a type that? What type are we on now?
I want a more interesting goblin commander. I've built like
so many.
There are
goblin
so
commanders.
many, but there's so many of them are so linear. I've built Krenko Mob Boss before. That one is far and away the most linear. It just says if I keep my Krenko on board, I win, basically. Yeah. Taps to make a number of goblins equals number of goblins you control. You just exponential growth, it goes nuts. I built Ward the Raid Mother. That was a really fun spell slinger deck. Didn't really care very much about goblins. I'm probably about to build Grenzo Dungeon Warden.
The one that cares about the bottom of your library?
Yeah.
Sick.
I reckon that'd be
like
fun because that actually cares about the number of creatures in your library. So that actually wants goblins in the deck. But the thing that I want is a goblin commander that doesn't make a ton of goblins like Krenko does, but cares about how many goblins you have.
Sure.
So I'm imagining like sort of like a Jetmir style effect. You know how Jetmir's got like different effects depending on how many creatures you control. It's like if you have 3 creatures, they get plus 1 plus 0 and they get vigilance, and then 6 creatures plus 1 plus 0, they get trample.
Yeah.
And then like 9 creatures, they get plus 1 plus 0 and have like double strike and trample and whatever.
There's actually a really viable CDH build around Jetmir. It's just hate bears.
I can believe it.
Just a ton of hate bears.
It ends the game.
Yeah, you build up a big enough board and lock enough opponents out that you just beat face.
It's just so good as an overrun effect. So I'm not saying as strong as Jetmir, but like goblins want to go wide, and I'm so shocked we haven't yet seen a commander that cares about how many goblins you have. I so badly want to see it. I'm thinking maybe it has to be red. Probably black is the next color I would add, but I'd love to see like a Jund goblin commander.
Well, like Wart the Raid Mother would...
Wart would go in then. You also get access to like Vexing Shusha is a cool like goblin card. There's a couple of other like green-red goblins. Goblin Anarchomancer is really sweet in green-red. So
green-red spells cost one less.
They've done green-red a few times. I want it to care about what goblins do. This is very similar to my problem with spirits, right? Like there are commanders that theoretically care about this creature type, but I don't think they care about what the creature type wants to do.
I also think it's a bit of a flavor thing as well. You want it to be a flavorful, like you could run Hilda of the Ice Crown or whatever it is for your spirit deck that taps a bunch of stuff.
Cares about things being tapped, but it's not a spirit. Doesn't say spirit on
Hilda's
there.
like the queen from Wicked Wizard of Oz, not Wizard of Oz. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the one that I was thinking of. Yeah. Like, I don't think it's flavorful enough.
No.
I just thought of an uncommon creature, which realizing you could make a PDH deck around this one if you wanted to.
There you go.
But it would be mono black, which kind of sucks looking at it.
Suck.
But it's Slingan Lieutenant. Have you seen this card?
This is the one that when you sack goblins, you deal damage.
Yeah,
right?
it has a free sack outlet for goblins, which thinking about it,
maybe not so good in the command zone.
Yeah,
too strong.
Maybe just making this a legendary would be bad because you've also got like Pestilent Goblin, which has persists.
Goes in. Yeah,
if you just add
one thing of adding counters when they ETB,
you go infinite.
All
right, maybe a version of this for a legendary creature.
Like this,
But the Slingan Lieutenant ETBs makes 2 goblins, and then you can sack a goblin to ding someone for 1, and you gain 1.
Yeah,
it's also a 4-mana 1/1. I actually think that's kind of flavorful for a
goblins.
Commander. Like it has a powerful effect on it, but a tiny little body.
Yeah,
but it can do some strong stuff if you paired it with good goblins.
I'd love to see like a 5-mana goblin that cares about like goblins being sacked, or ideally I think goblins being tapped. I think goblins want to go fast and go wide.
And swing and go have haste.
I want to see a goblin that says something like, when 6 goblins you control become tapped, goblins you control get +4/+0 until end of turn.
That'd be sick. Like, or like you could just use the pack tactics mechanic. Do you remember that mechanic from, I think it was the original Adventures in the Forgotten Realm?
Right.
There was like a pack tactics. If you attack with a creature, or if you're attacking with 6 or more power, I think it is.
You control total power 6 or more.
Yeah, then you get
do the pack tactics thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
And pack tactics is super flavorful for goblins as well.
That's true.
So
they do chase around in a pack. It's true.
All right, look, with the amount of product Wizards of the Coast is producing, surely there is something out there for everyone, but sometimes not. The beauty about our format being unsanctioned is that at the end of the day, it's all for fun. So if you'd like to have a go at templating your own commander, like Walt and I have done a pretty okay job of. I was going to say bad, but we're actually all right at it. You did the Thrifty Thursday Incarnate one pretty well.
It's true.
Go for it. And hey, maybe the design team at Wizards of the Coast just might hear our wishes and answer them, or read our minds and create one that I was already thinking of. So, Space Commanders, command received. Sorry, I went very off script on that command received there. I apologize.
Making me laugh at the very end. It threw me a little bit. Well, to the listeners out there, do you feel commanded? Which mechanics and commanders do you want to see in Magic's future?
Yeah, and you can tell us in a plethora of ways. Twitter, Instagram, Threads, @GetCommanded on all of those platforms. But the best way to talk to Walt and myself and other members of our community, who I imagine are going to have their own wish list after this episode comes out,
100%,
is on Discord as the Greensboro Commander Community server. So it's in the show notes. Jump in there and chat with us and other members of our playgroup.
Yep, for sure. And of course, this show could not exist without the support of our patrons over on Patreon. So definitely check that out. It's linked in the show notes. We'd like to thank our patrons Stella Tam, Fuzzy, and Bottomless Potamus. And we'd also like to make a very special shout out to Fletcher Cutting, who supports us in the Space Commander tier. You are the best.
You are the best, Fletcher. And you know who else is the best? Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast. Look, these guys are, as you know, because we talk about them all the time, creators of some incredible deck boxes, sleeves, binders, and all that kind of stuff. But if you go to palmsoffgaming.com.au/#getcommanded, you're going to get 10% off your purchase when you go to that link. It also supports us at the same time, which is really, really nice. But they've just released, like as this episode is coming out, I think it's like a week ago that they've released them, the new blackout sleeve sleeves that they've got.
These are the ones that we got a little bit in advance. So we actually have played with these a bit. This is what
Bit of product testing, actually.
this is what my the Thursday Incarnate deck, for those of you who remember from Thrifty 100 a little while ago, is in these sleeves.
My CEDH Niv Mizzet Perun deck.
Really?
Is also, yeah, and I put Niv in these sleeves when we got the sleeves.
So like a couple months ago now.
Yeah, and they are still super clean, super
Nice.
strong, great shuffle feel, no cracks, and they're like, I think they're like $15 on the site before our discount applies.
So they're not going to set you back very far, and that is a high praise from James to have put his very
100%.
expensive
My
CEH deck
baby
in there.
deck.
So
So
that is palmsoffgaming.com.au / #get commanded. Check them out. Get some sleeves.
For sure.
Well, that's all the magic stuff, I reckon. So we better planeswalk out of magic into somewhere else. I think it's my turn.
I think so. We've been recording a lot recently and it's all out of whack. So just you go for it.
I
What
will
have you
go.
been doing? What have you been up to?
I've planeswalked here before, but I'd like to planeswalk back because it's completed now. Breath of the Wild.
You
I finally finished it.
This is the original Breath of the Wild, not Tears of the Kingdom.
No, this
because
is-
Walt plays video games
Out of order.
out of order and very slowly.
Yes, it's true. I finished it. It was a little bit anticlimactic.
It's so underwhelming, the final battle, right?
I'm such a completionist, and I had like gone to, I reckon, like 95% of the shrines already. So I had
95%.
I reckon I looked up how many like I would need to visit that I hadn't already, and I think it was like 8 or something.
Wow.
So there's like 100 or something in
How
the
many
game.
Korok seeds did you have?
A lot.
Yeah, the Korok seeds, I got so, like, I'm the opposite of you. If me and you were to play Breath of the Wild co-op,
Yep.
I would piss you off so much.
I can
Because I'd
only
be
imagine.
like, come on, let's go. And you're like, wait, there's this rock I haven't picked up yet.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Everywhere I went, I think that was the thing I loved so much about the game, is it incentivized exploration, right? Like, so much of the things that would make your character stronger and would like straight up would make your character stronger.
Yeah, you
were
get buffs
only
and-
found by exploring. Like, you have to go find that shrine. When you see it goes blip bloop 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 on
like,
your
what
map.
was that? I
It's
need to find it.
Yeah, I gotta find it right now. The Korok seeds, same thing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed all of that. I definitely over prepared for Ganon. I had the barbarian armor, which I went and found the full set of. And then I spent, poor Electro was watching the whole time. I spent like the last,
What a trooper.
of the last like 3 hours that I played of Breath of the Wild, maybe even like 5 hours, about 80% of it was spent just fighting Lynels, because I had to get Lynel horns to upgrade the barbarian armor. I was way over leveled. I got the whole set of armor to the 3rd level, which is the 2nd highest, and was like, maybe I need to get to the 4th. And Electro was like, I think you'll be fine. Let's go fight Ganon.
I mean, I fought Ganon on my 2nd playthrough of the game. 'Cause when I was getting ready for Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, I'm going to try and just speed run it.
Yeah.
Not professionally speed run it, because
No.
I'm not that kind of insane person. But I was like, I'm just going to try and play the story as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I did all 4 Divine Beasts, and when I got to Ganon, I maybe had like a meal prepared. I had like 1 food. I had maybe like plate armor that I found in the castle on the way there, and a couple of sticks still in my sword inventory.
Oh my God.
And I still beat it.
Yep.
So like, you were going into a knife fight with a military grade jet.
Yep.
Like,
Straight up. I had like every weapon that you'd possibly want to have. All my armor was like completed. I had like 10 like meals that would give you +8 hearts.
Ridiculous.
I was way over prepared. But it was a really, really fun game, and I'm so happy that I picked it up, honestly. I've owned
are you going to play Tears of the Kingdom?
I will. I don't think I'll play it yet.
It's still pretty pricey as well. I think it's still like $80-90.
This is the benefit of playing games about 3 years after release. You can pick them up for about half price, especially when the next game in a series comes out and everyone's like, well, no one's going to want this anymore. Breath of the Wild, 50% off. That's when I bought my copy of Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I just did a recent purchase as well. Well, it wasn't a purchase because it was free. Arkham Knights just went onto the Xbox Game Pass, and I just grabbed that. It's really expansive. I logged in being like, oh, it's going to be like the other Batman Arkham games, and I'm going to understand it real quick. You can play as all 4 of them at any point in the campaign.
Wow.
You can play as Red Hood, Nightwing, Robin, or Batgirl at any point, and they all have separate skill trees. They all have separate abilities. So it's like playing 4 video games at the same time.
Jeez.
It's amazing. Go download that.
Sounds great. Well, that's all we have time for. So we'll see you next Friday for another transmission from the Space Commanders.
Goodbye, Commander players.